audio again. I don't know.
Yes, we can.
Okay.
This is Safety and Public Works Committee meeting. We have 4 items on the agenda tonight. First of which is to approve an event application for the Tour of Lakes. And if, Mr. Sandy, if you want to take us through this event, go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair, and members of the committee. So this event's been going on for, I don't know, 4 or 5 years now without really a hitch. It is called Tour of the Lakes. It's run by the Paul Bunyan Cyclists. This year it's on June 4th, 2022. They basically close off the Laurel Street lot. They take off from there, and they do a big loop around the Northern Lakes area, Nisswa, Pequot Lakes kind of thing. Then they end up coming back to the Laurel Street lot for an event afterwards. It's usually catered by Sage on Laurel, and they typically provide everything for the event. And so really, there isn't a lot to look at here. The only thing that we have in the conditions is the insurance requirement, and that the applicant requests traffic control 1 week prior to the event. We typically close the parking lot down on Friday night because otherwise we get a lot of the bar traffic parking in there overnight and staying there. And then it's a kind of a mess in the morning on Saturday when it's at 6 a.m. or whatever they're closing it. And so that has been what we've done in the past, is close it that Friday before. But that's really it.
Is there a stipulation to make sure that everybody knows that the parking lot's closed on Friday at a certain time in that packet or in that application? I don't have it in front of me.
So like a notification process?
Yeah, just for SHAPS VFW.
We can definitely, put that on them to go out and notify the adjacent properties that it'll be closed on Friday night.
I think it'd be a good idea.
Yep.
Okay.
Move to approve with the addition of notifying the adjacent property owners of that.
Second.
Motion and second. Any more discussion? Hearing none, go to a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Item 2 is a presentation for the Brainerd 2022 Pavement Condition Assessment.
Oh, baby.
And this is the big presentation for City Engineer Public Works Director, Paul Sandy. Take it away.
Because I have this fancy little tool.
Yeah, I like it.
So this is something that we've taken on doing every 3 years. We typically update you guys after each year, but this is one of the years that we actually go out and rescore all of our streets. So how this takes place is we have a couple interns go out, and they basically spend a majority of their summer measuring cracks and potholes, and there's an equation they put it into, and I can show you the spreadsheet after the presentation here, but it's a pretty long, arduous process, but it helps us select street projects for the future. And so that's why we keep this data, why we try to do it every 3 years and keep this data up to date. So as some background, we started this in 2005. We skipped about 7 years, so we did it in 2005. We did the next cycle in 2012, and since then we've been doing it every 3 years. So 2015, 2018, and 2021. So just a little overview of our system, and I think a lot of you have seen this once before. We have 83.06 miles of streets. Of that, 80.2 are paved, 0.17 is bridge, and 2.61 miles is unpaved. We have 16.26 miles of alleys, and of that, 2.73 are paved and 13.53 are unpaved. We don't rate our alleys, being that they're not high-speed areas, they're low volume, they're just meant for the business or the residents right next to it. So we typically don't do those. But we do all of our 80.2 miles of paved street. This is just an overview of what we've done since basically 2010 to 2020, which is 11 years. We did not include this last year's street projects. We're still working on. We take this information from our financial reporting data that gets audited every year. And so we have not reported that yet in 2021. And so this does not include our 2021 street projects. The pavement data does, this cost data does not. You can see we reconstructed or resurfaced around 113,000 feet or 21.4 miles of streets. And that's about 25% of our system over the last 10 years. Of that, that's replacing every street about one time every 38.9 years, which is kind of what we shoot for. We shoot for an average lifespan of our pavement of about 40 years. So we're right on target there. You can see the total cost there, a little bit shy of 18.7 million, and that equates to about $1.7 million a year in just street costs. That doesn't include storm sewer utility, sanitary sewer, or water main. This is strictly streets we're talking about. Like I said before, that doesn't include our 2021 street projects. We haven't reported on that cost data yet. On top of what we've resurfaced or reconstructed, we've seal coated just under 170,000 feet or 32 miles of streets. And that's equivalent to seal coating once every 25 years on our streets. You can see the cost data there, about a little bit less than 1.2 million or about 108,000 a year. So you can see the cumulative reconstructed, resurfaced, or preserved, what we call it, right around 53.5 miles. So this just gives us an idea of how often people are seeing construction in front of their house. You know, you seal coat a street, there's a perception that, you know, you're getting a new surface. You're getting, so every time, basically a resident in Brainerd can see something every 15 years. You can see the cumulative total there, about $1.8 million a year. So this is just outlining some of our past projects. I won't get too far into this. It kind of goes back to, I think 2012 was College Drive, the first one there, and kind of moves on from there. Some of the more recent stuff we've done, Southeast Brainerd last year. We did some streets in 2020, 5th Avenue, Northeast, B Street, C Street, and D Street in 2020. Kind of just goes over all the projects that we've done over the past 10 years or so. So this is kind of the bulk of the presentation right here. So this, as I was kind of stating before, we undertook this pavement management program back in 2005. And the program rates each segment of street on a scale of 0 to 4. The entire street system was rated once again 2005, 2012, 2015, 2018, and 2021. For the purposes of this presentation, the 2005 data, we kind of dropped that. It doesn't really provide us a lot of good at this point, and it just gets to be too much. So, back when we rated in 2018 compared to 2021, you can see that first line there, the 0 being poor, the pavement is completely failed, to excellent being a 4.0. On average, in 2018, the city ranked a 3.35 out of 4. Back when we rated it in 2021, it was a 3.4 out of 4. So it was held pretty consistent. One thing about these scores is it's very subjective to kind of who's doing it. And so people look at things differently. We have interns doing this. We teach new interns every couple of years how to do this and what to look for. And so this data is subjective to that point of who's rating the streets. We try to stay consistent on which segment we're rating, but people do look at things differently. So you'll see some fluctuation in the scores. For example, if a score goes up from one year to the next year, for example, the North Annex, 3.81 to a 3.92, we didn't do any construction work in the North Annex in those years, but yet the score went up. That's just a sign of that subjectivity of our data, of who is doing the street rating and how they're looking at different surface deficiencies on the pavement. So generally, you're gonna see, you should see scores that go down unless there's a large project in that 3 years that would indicate that the score goes up. We're taking the worst pavements, we're making them new again, and so your score should come up in that area. For example, Southeast is a good example. Went from a 3.31 to a 3.48. We had a large project down there. This is just an indication of how our pavements are doing, broken down by different area of town. You can see it's broken down by north, northeast, north annex, northwest, south, southeast, southwest. And it just kind of shows how each of our pavements are doing. So you can see the north annex, that is our best pavements. It's our newest pavements also. And so by just that alone, they're going to be doing the best as far as scores are concerned. You can see that looks like Northeast is probably doing the worst. Northeast is also our biggest area of streets. It has the most mileage of streets. We have done some projects up there recently, but as the scores would indicate, it definitely needs some more work. This is that same data. It's a lot of data. It's just a indication of how many miles of streets we have in each category. So bottom line, 3.75 to 4. We have a total of 36.34 miles in that score range. And you can see the difference between each year. It's a lot of data. I thought I would throw it in there. It's basically the interpretation of that graph that I just showed you. This is a little bit better depiction. This is how many miles by surface rating we have. And so it's a more of a visual graphic. So you can see that 3.75 to 4 range covers a lot of our pavements. And then it kind of goes down in a parabolic type fashion. So you can see, don't have a lot of pavements in the real failing score region from that 0 to 2.5. And then it starts kind of rising up from there based on how many miles of surface or how many miles there is per each surface rating. It'll go. Uh-oh.
I wouldn't be having this problem right now either.
It's not responding. So.
Do you have any control on it, Sean? What's that?
He's
You're
doing it right now.
You're doing this to Paul?
You grab control. The slides are in the, well, let me open it back up again.
Pull some of that other stuff.
Richard's gonna fall asleep over here.
Yep.
Why is nothing showing though on my screen anymore?
Funny you mentioned that. Overhead projector. I saw one of those pop up on Marketplace the other day on my Facebook.
Oh, really?
An actual overhead.
Yeah.
The slide projector?
Well,
No,
it was
no,
not
the overhead projector where you
I
put
remember
the.
those.
Yep.
I found one that we had
I lost everything, Sean.
Is that what they're called? The overhead projector?
Yeah.
Or not?
The one where you put the plastic sheet on. Yeah, that's an overhead projector.
Wasn't too long ago we were using it.
Yeah.
Hey, Paul,
Yep.
if I share, because you sent me your presentation, if I shared my screen,
I actually use
maybe,
I don't think that would work.
because I could just take the
No.
whole thing out.
Okay.
You know, you could. Yeah, it was really easy to do.
I found one at.
You're on dual screen.
Well, why did it just change mid-presentation?
It didn't work.
That's odd.
Probably just need a new bulb.
No,
The
one of those-
computers do what they want sometimes.
Yeah.
You took it up.
All right, back to her.
Fix the whole thing.
Oh, gee.
Sweet. All right.
You do wicked puppet
Part
shows
two.
with those.
Sorry about that, guys.
No worries.
Lost
You can put
everything.
paper up there and you can put something up.
Okay, so the other thing that we look at is our age of our streets. So as a city, our average age, foot per foot, is 22.92 years old. The oldest pavements we have, again, match kind of where our worst pavements are. That's Northeast, 28.44 years old. And then, of course, our newest pavements being 15.35 in the North Annex kind of matches what we have for scores in that area. This is just another representation of what I was showing you guys before. It's the age of streets. This is actually very objective data because if you don't do a project, it'll be an increase of 3 years, over 3 years. So you look at the North Annex, it has consistently
6, 9,
risen,
12, 15, 18.
yep, by 3 years over the last, since 2012. So it's just a graphical representation of the data you just saw. Over 20, I did not drop 2005 on this one, but 2005 to 2021. Again, a lot of data here, but it just gives you a good, accurate representation of how old each of our streets are based on pavement miles.
We have like one street that's over 76 years old.
We do, yep. This is another good representation of how the score, or how the age kind of outlines between basically 0 to 5 all the way up to 76 plus. There's a few streets down there you can see the real small lines on the bar graph that are over that basically 65-year-old age. But you know, most of the streets falling between that 0 to 30 years old. One thing we also keep track of is our other pavements, which are like our parking lots and our trails. This is a little bit less, we don't score these really. We kind of do a visual evaluation of them, and we give them a scale between fair, poor, excellent, good. Keep track of when we seal coat them, keep track of when we resurface them, and make sure nothing is kind of falling through the cracks per se. You can see we did a lot of parking lot upgrades back in 2020. City Hall, the police department, fire department. So a lot of those got upgraded back to the excellent areas. Our worst pavement in our parking lots is over at Memorial Park, the ones by the softball fields in which we purchased. That's our worst pavement at this point as far as parking lots are concerned. Same goes for trails. So we keep track of our trails and how old they are, when we last seal coated them. We typically don't seal coat our trails, we'll fog seal them, so we don't put the aggregate on top because people don't like that roughness if they're rollerblading or doing things like that. We just put a fog seal on them to keep the layer of oil on the rock surface. So this is, I'm gonna go to the graphical representation because this is a little bit hard to read. So this is kind of the summary we put together. So this is, you can see over between 2005 and 2021, how our pavements have both aged and how our scores changed. This is another area that I'll point out kind of the subjectivity of our data. You can see we had a large decrease in 2015 in our scores. I think that was either a subject of people rating the streets too hard or looking at them a little bit differently than someone else might have. But it's kind of a steady increase. If you were to get rid of the data point in 2015, you can see a pretty steady increase as the city's been pretty aggressive in maintaining their pavements over the last 10 years. So these slides kind of get into why we do kind of preventative maintenance, such as seal coating and crack sealing. This graph represents the age of the street and how many feet we've seal coated and how many feet we have left that aren't seal coated. You can see that the green bars represent what has been seal coated, and you can see that a majority of our streets from 2000 to 2021 do have a seal coat on them. We tried to do that very early on in its life. Once the pavement loses that top layer of oil, we try to get a seal coat on it, do a crack seal and throw a seal coat on it to restore that top layer of oil and keep the water out. The more you keep the water out of pavement, the less subject it's going to be to freeze thaw and cracking and potholing and all of that stuff that happens. This was an interesting table that we just recently updated. We had the data up to 2015. This is kind of a representation of our pothole patching and maintenance practices. We do have a full street crew that does a lot of pothole patching in the spring and in the fall. And we've taken a pretty aggressive approach in the last 6-7 years in doing a lot more pothole filling. We find that is good for public perception and also keeps the tires on your car. You know, potholes aren't good for your suspension, for your tires, for your car in general. We've taken a pretty aggressive approach in pothole patching in recent years, and we can see it by just the number of complaints we get into City Hall regarding potholes in the spring and fall, that money really is well spent. On an average, about $5,200 a year. We put out about 60 tons a year of pothole patch at an average cost of about $84 a ton. This is our street priority list, so this is how we generate our 5-year plan. The intention would be to bring back the 5-year plan at the next city council meeting. That would be adding the year 2026 on. These are all the streets that are currently in the 5-year plan up to 2025. So you'll see these in more of a format that's in the 5-year plan here at the next meeting. But some of the streets we're doing next year, or I should say this year, the Juniper Street, North 6th, North 7th, and North 3rd are all on there. 2023, we're concentrating down in South Brainerd at South 7th Street, Paul Street, Paul Circle, Todd Street, that area down there, Rosewood, Sycamore, Tamarack, are all in need of some repairs. 2024, I believe we get over into the Hillcrest, Norway, Graydon area, and then 2025, shooting down into the industrial park on Wright Street and South 10th, and that along with the MnDOT project in 2025 on Highway 210 will be a pretty busy summer. This is a kind of a cost evaluation of what it costs us to seal coat. We don't do much microsurfacing. It's a different type of pavement management we haven't done much or any of in the city. It's a little more expensive. It has a kind of a thicker profile, and it's more of a slurry that gets packed in on top of a scratched type surface. But we do a lot of seal coating and a lot of street patching and pothole filling, and you can kind of see the cost difference there per linear foot. This is kind of a very broad average cost of what it takes us to reconstruct or resurface or overlay streets. So you can see it goes up. You know, an overlay is kind of the least intrusive construction type to renew a surface. That's about $40 linear foot. A bituminous resurfacing is simply taking off the existing bituminous asphalt and putting new asphalt on, or estimate that at about $50 a foot. Reclaim and inlay is simply grinding up the old asphalt, leaving it in place, and then placing new bituminous on top. That's about $60 a foot. A bituminous reconstruct and total reconstruct are what we do a lot of. That's the aggregate section and the pavement on a bituminous reconstruct. We're looking at about $80 a foot for that. And a total reconstruct, which you'll see a lot of that in North Brainerd, about $130 a foot. So just going over there's other things that we look at of why and when we improve a road. Obviously the surface rating comes into play with that, but there's also other things such as complaints, underground utilities. That's always a big one. You know, how is the water main doing underneath the road? How is the sewer? What is the traffic? Does it make sense to do the street now because other streets in the area are being done for like project coordination or project pricing? Other factors that we take into account, obviously, are the cost effectiveness, the condition of the curb, how the drainage in the area is working, what is the utility replacement needs, what is the traffic counts. And as you all are kind of well aware, we have basically two standards in the city. We have our 9-ton design standard, which is our state aid standard, and that's for like heavy commercial streets. And then we have our residential standard, which is our simple 4 inches of aggregate, 2 inches of bituminous. We call that a 7-ton design. That's basically the street on any given day that it's not under load restrictions would be able to handle 7 tons per axle. So any questions about that?
Anyone? You only got to see part 2.
I live this every day.
He's measuring cracks and potholes all the time.
The only more of a comment too, just you put up the one graph there a couple slides back about the $130 per linear foot. That's the total reconstruction, and it's just impressed on me. I've seen this before. The preventative maintenance up front, the goal is just pushing that 130 linear foot cost off as far as possible. So the things that you mentioned, like the pothole improvements, the chip seal or the crack sealing,
Yep.
totally worth the funds to
To help stretch out that 5-year plan. That's
Yeah.
really what you're trying to do, you know,
increase
you
the life
can't.
of the
You
pavement.
can't possibly fund every street you want to do in a given year, and doing that preventative maintenance up front kind of stretches out your funds to help, you know, make sure that the streets that are coming into your 5-year plan are in like the worst failed condition possible, and you can afford to do all of the worst conditioned streets you can.
When we've covered almost half of our 80 miles of streets in 11 years, so you're doing it 4 times as fast as
Well-
replace our streets, which is, we're gonna catch up eventually, right?
Yeah, I mean, I would say we're pretty caught up right now. On average, we should be doing about 2 miles a year of resurfacing or reconstruction. And that puts us on doing every street once every 40 years. So, I'll give the example of a curb and gutter section. We kind of use an 80-year rule. That'll last us 80 years. If we install it year 1, that curb and gutter should last 80 years. So that's 2 pavement cycles. The first 40 years, you go and replace the pavement, resurface the street. The second 40 years after that, we would do a full reconstruct. And so on average, we're keeping up. If you look at that first cost graph, I can show you. Right here, the first number you should look at is that in 11 years, we've done 21.4 miles of streets. So that's reconstructed or resurfaced 21 miles, which is an average of once every 40 years, every 38.91 years. So that's right on target, basically. Maybe we got a little overzealous and did 3 extra blocks, but it's pretty good considering the amount of street system we take care of.
And the weather, the nature that we're fighting.
Yep. So I mean, from an overall system standpoint, you know, we're in I think very good shape. I think Brainerd street system is very well developed. There's obviously always work that needs to be done. Every time I drive through town, that's all I see is work. But yeah, I mean, I think, you know, being aggressive these last, you know, 10 to 15 years has really paid off. We've really done a lot of streets. We haven't expanded our system, which just, we take on extra liability, right? I mean, it's, anytime we expand, we take on extra liability.
So I do remember, I think College Drive was, it was used as like an experiment years ago, some experimental pavement that didn't really quite work out. In that time, were there any other pavements, or since then, or some kind of surfacing agents that are more cost effective, they last longer, they're better for this weather, anything like that that's coming up that might improve any of this?
So it wasn't really experimental. It was just the type of oil and the size of rock that was used was a little bit controversial at that time. We saved money by paving it. You know, the bigger aggregate mix and the B oil mix, which is a lesser grade oil, is less expensive. And so the engineer at the time wanted to save some money by putting in less expensive pavement. Right now, we pave with the smaller aggregate and what we call a C oil, which is a polymer additive oil, which works better in these conditions. It's more flexible, it cracks, it provides less cracking at lower temperatures. So C oil is more expensive, but we've seen benefits in using the smaller aggregate in C oil, and that's what we put on College Drive. We milled down the 2 inches of the top larger aggregate and lesser grade oil and put on smaller aggregate and higher grade oil to keep that mat together.
Gotcha.
So it wasn't really experimental. It was always specified, but it's
Yeah.
just a cost difference.
Right.
You're
I guess
paying-
I guess I was more curious about future products, if there's anything, if they're making any headway in that.
Performance grade oils have been around for a while now, and they're kind of the top of the line at this point. You know, they've done a lot of research, a lot of testing in different climates. Obviously, Minroad over on Highway 94 does a lot of testing of different oils and pavements, and a lot of the states around this area use Minroad's data to write their specifications. And so MnDOT is kind of on the leading edge of pavement designs and oils and things like that. And so I don't see any change in how we use the performance grade oils at this time, but really, unless something huge comes out, I don't foresee that.
Maybe Moon Rock or,
Right, right, Moon Rock or Diamond.
yeah, Diamond Road would be great. Would be fantastic.
So from here is what I kind of want to do. I'm going to pass this over. I've been in contact, and I got kind of in tune with what these guys do. It's Streetlogics, Street Scan. They are a company that has worked kind of across the United States, and it's I talked about the subjectivity of our data and who's rating the streets and that kind of thing. Going to get into a proposal that I've been working with them on to make our process automated. And so I wanted to show that to you guys tonight, show you the cost for it, and see if there's interest from this group in pursuing this type of option. So
Okay.
I'm at this point, Bill, I'm going to kind of turn it over to you, and we'll probably have to switch over the thing to have Bill run through his presentation.
So for the public, this is item number 3, a presentation of, is it Street Scan the company?
Yeah,
Street
Streetlogics.
scan, yes.
Yeah, Street Scan is the company, Streetlogics is the software.
Streetlogics software from Street Scan. And is it Bill?
Yes, it is. This is Bill Eddy.
Bill, go ahead and take it away.
Okay, let me share my screen here. Okay, can you guys see that?
Segue with
Yeah.
the camera on it.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, so thanks very much, Paul. And yeah, my name's Bill Eddy. I'm the Director of Sales here with Street Scan, and as I said, Streetlogics is our asset management platform that's part of the solution. Wanted to give you a kind of a quick overview of who we are, what we do, and how it gets done. You know, we've been talking with Paul now for the last couple of months and gone through some proposals and such, and you know, he seems to think it can bring some value to Brainerd. So let me go through this quick PowerPoint first. You know, we've developed a solution that kind of goes. You know, it's a different way of doing things than they've been done traditionally. So, you know, some of the traditional surveying methods that, you know, that are being done out there, and there's still lots and lots of municipalities and counties and DOTs doing it this way. But, you know, kind of taking the manual, you know, windshield survey type approach, you know, and from talking to all the clients and prospects that we have, you know, we find that most everyone says it's a very time-consuming, labor-intensive process that they kind of like to get away from. You end up with really a very subjective data set. You know, Paul kind of alluded to that, and it's not that you may have very qualified people, qualified engineers out there doing it, but you know, we're human beings, and humans look at things slightly differently. So one person might rate a road a certain score, and another one give it a slightly different score. So the subjectivity really is a big one that we hear a lot about. It can be difficult to do an entire road network or infrastructure network. So you're kind of doing it piecemeal at times. And the manual approach is not really a very easily repeatable process. And then, you know, the data, as you're collecting this data, you're kind of translating it slowly. So conditions change quickly, and you know, by the time you're done with a manual study, it's maybe already out of date. So Street Scan, we've developed an automated approach to infrastructure assessment of roads and sidewalks and other right-of-way assets. We've got a very comprehensive solution that provides objective data that's a very cost-effective approach. And we combine computer vision and machine learning to deliver these services. We've got some specialized vehicles that I'm going to show you here that do these studies. So for the roadways, we have our scan car, which actually rides your entire road network. So you folks have 80 miles or so of roads, we would do your entire road network. The car is outfitted with a variety of image capturing devices. If you look down in the lower right-hand corner there, you see we've got an array of 3D cameras that are mounted on the rear of the car. These are pavement facing, and this is where we're getting very detailed distress data on road conditions. Then on the top of the vehicle, we have a 360-degree camera, or ladybug camera is what it's called, similar to what you see with the Google cars. So it's kind of like getting your own private Google Street View, and we're capturing not only additional street images, but also other assets in the right-of-way that you might be interested in assessing and inventorying, things like street signs and street lights and traffic lights and that type of thing. And I'll show you a little bit more detail on that. But so once all of this data has been captured, and we then process all of that data, and depending on the size of your network, there's literally terabytes of data that get generated. But we then process that data by applying our artificial intelligence and algorithms to generate street scores based on the PCI scale. The ASTM PCI standard is, if you're familiar with it or if you're not, it's a scale from 0 to 100, 0 being the worst, 100 being the best. And we then score all of your roads and provide a color-coded map that corresponds with the score that road achieved in the study. Then to take a closer look at the 360-degree camera, as I said, we can pull out individual assets like the street signs, street lights, catch basins, pavement markings. You can see we're just kind of like showing you some of the different objects that can be captured in the right-of-way. We've also found that this service is useful to not only, say, the public works folks or the folks that are responsible for maintaining the infrastructure, but the 360-degree imagery can be utilized by other departments that might be interested, fire department, police department, tax department, that type of thing. So you can really get, additional value from that service. Then for the sidewalks, we actually have it's a separate data collection process. We have what we call our scan carts, but they're essentially outfitted with the same types of image capturing devices, and we will, walk the entire sidewalk network within the city, and create this video library. But also we're creating a sidewalk condition index, or an SCI score, very similar to the 0 to 100 for the pavement scores. This way you're able to categorize the sidewalks, and then put the maintenance activities in place based on the condition of those sidewalks. We're also able to capture all of your ramps within the city for ADA compliance. And each one of these, you'll see when I'm going to show you the StreetLogic's asset management platform, but we create a separate layer within the platform, so that you can click on streets, you can click on sidewalks, you can click on ramps, and it will bring up the data, the corresponding data for those assets. So that's I'm going to jump into the StreetLogic's piece now, but we kind of like to equate the data piece, all that data collection, as kind of the body of the solution. But really where the rubber meets the road, so to speak, and where the real differentiators are, is with how do I then visualize and manipulate that data for for my maintenance operations. So the StreetLogic's platform is a highly robust, highly customizable platform that allows you to really create, budget plans, capital plans. There's all kinds of, a lot of the historical data, Paul, that you mentioned that you have, that can all be, loaded into our system. In addition to then, if we go ahead and are scanning your roads, we include all that data as well. So I'm going to jump out of this unless there's any questions. I kind of wanted, I don't know how your time schedule is here tonight. We can answer questions at the end, or if you've got any questions as I move into the Streetlogic platform here.
Bill, how much do you have left, do you think, if we just let you roll through it?
Yeah, I'd say about 10 minutes, 10, 12 minutes.
Okay, yeah, go ahead and just
Good.
finish up. We'll talk at the end then.
Okay, good. Can you guys see the Streetlogic screen?
Yep.
Okay. So this is a, this is an entirely web-based, I got a bug here. This is our demo site. But so the Streetlogic platform is an entirely web-based GIS platform. It's accessible, from any web-enabled device, desktop, laptop, what have you. Unlimited users with the license. So I'm just going to kind of go through this quickly to give you an idea. But you can see on the right-hand side of the screen here, we've got all of our visuals with the maps. This is actually depicting the PCI scores for this particular client. And you can see the scale here on the right. In the middle, we've got some charts. And this shows you all the different GIS layers that are contained. So we've landed on what we call the pavement evaluation layer, or the PCI layer. And then down the left-hand side here, there's a variety of tools. I'll go through a couple of these real quickly. But so this, as I said, this is an interactive map. So we can click on any road, and it will bring up the for some reason it's not loading that. I don't know why it's doing that, but that, well, if you click on a street, it will bring up all of the attributes for that particular street. It will give you the street name, the from street, the to street, what its PCI score is, and a variety of other details. Let's see if it's also available here in tabular format. So, and this can be exported into, any kind of report. But this shows you, all of the data that would be included. So, as I said, the from street, the to street, PCI score, what the maintenance activity suggestion is, what the estimated cost for that maintenance suggestion is, what functional class it falls into. All of those things are included there. Let's see if the 360 camera is working. Yeah, and then you can you can see this blue dot here, but you can click on anywhere on the map and get the 360 image for that particular location. And again, this can be useful for a lot of different applications, but it will show you a complete 360 view of the entire road network. So let's see. I want to show you the pavement maintenance layer. So now this layer is, and this is where, this is where the customization really comes into play. So this particular client, these are all their different, maintenance activities. So, crack sealing, surface removal, reconstruction, mill and overlay. These may be similar to your terminology, yours may be different. So this would, if it was Brainerd, it would obviously be showing you all of the maintenance activities for your road network. But this is where, this is where we determine which which roads require the maintenance at certain times. So we create what's called a decision tree. And this is where, again, where the customization comes into play. And I'll just really show you kind of high level what the concept is. But, this is where we, in this particular case, this client has, asphalt roads and concrete roads. So there's obviously different maintenance activities for each surface type. But as after the study's done, if a road falls into this 0 to 40 PCI scoring range, it would be slated for reconstruction. Their reconstruction cost is $100 a yard. But again, this would be all customized based on your costs. So, you may have a different cost here, but you can see with all the different, PCI ranges, there's a different, maintenance activity associated with that. So I think what I want to show you here are the budgeting tools, which really are probably some of the more, most effective tools from the solution. So we have what's called, we have the budget planner tool, we have the compare scenarios tool, and the budget estimator tool. So the budget planning tool, this is where I can look at, my different assets. In this case, we'll just stick with pavement, but I could do it with sidewalks, I could do it with signs. But we'll look at the pavement. Let's say we've got, we wanted to create a 5-year plan. We've got an annual budget of $7 million, let's say, and we'll call that 7 million. And then I can execute on that. And you can see it's going to generate a 5-year plan. You can see at that investment level, so the current PCI score, the average PCI score for the network is at a 73. At that $7 million investment, it's just about maintaining that PCI level, slightly dropping off when you get to year 5. So if you wanted to keep it constant, you might have to increase the budget some. But this is, showing you a detailed plan year by year. You can see the color-coded map here, year 1 in red, year 2 in green, year 3 in yellow, etc. And this is all, there's a tabular format here as well. So it's showing you all the details of the plan, by street, by maintenance activity, all of those things. I can actually generate a report here as well, to export this and send this to anybody. But these are, this really, we kind of like to call them, they're great budget planning tools, or, city council tools, podium ready tools, where you can kind of put in different scenarios, look at different budget levels, and see what's the optimal application for the maintenance funds that you have. I want to show you also this budget estimator tool. This kind of comes at it from a different angle. So again, we can select the asset, but we'll stay with pavement. Let's say we'll look at a 5-year plan. Our current, let's say we have this is more goal oriented. So we're currently at a 73 average. Let's say that we wanted to take that up to a 75 over the next 5 years. What kind of investment would it take to do that? So I can run that, and the system is going to run through all these different iterations and then come up with, this is showing you, year over year, what investment would be required to get you to that 75 PCI level. And if I, like what I see, I can then apply that, and it's going to generate a similar report to what you saw with the previous tool. So it's showing you, year over year, how I can increase that average PCI score for my road network. And then again, I can create a report. I should also mention, you see down here where we've got, you can modify these. You can certainly tweak them. You can add segments you can move a segment from one year to another, or delete segments if there's, if it makes logical sense when you're actually rolling out your pavement maintenance plans year by year. You can make changes to this till you come up with a plan that, you know, you really feel is right on, so.
All right, Bill?
So, yeah, I mean, I can just also show you quickly some of these other layers that that I talked about. So, street signs, for example. So that here's the layer that, you know, I could drill into this. This is showing you these are all the different street signs that this particular client has. You know, they've got, and again, it's in tabular format, so, you know, they got over 21,847 signs. And I can, you know, prioritize these for replacement, for maintenance, what have you.
I can see this is very comprehensive. It's pretty impressive stuff. And it seems to me like this is exactly the kind of software that you would benefit from to make things more efficient. What it's going to come down to is the cost worth it? So I have a spreadsheet in front of me that tells me it's $59,690 one-time fee, and then it's $5,750 per year annually just to basically maintain and rescan every 5 years you rescan, every 3 years?
That the total cost yearly is that 12,000 number you see. So the annual fee for the software or the licensing fees is that 5,750 number, and then the average cost per year over 5 years to rescan the streets is at 6,320. Those two added together is that 12,000.
Okay.
So it's basically the 12,000 a year would be the cost to maintain this and rescan streets every 5 years.
Okay, so this would be adding 12,000 to the budget. I'm wondering what that offsets as far as what we're paying. Obviously, it's going to free up interns from doing things, but what are we paying interns to cover this cost in the first place? I know there's going to be more efficiency if we use something like this. Just talk about some of the benefits outside of that, and including that.
So I'll say that last year we hired 2 interns. We typically only hired 1. Interns average cost about $13,000 a year. We kept that second intern on this year because of our large street project in North Brainerd. But in subsequent years, we'd be able to go back to that 1 intern, which is basically the cost of this software. And with that intern is budgeted out of the construction fund, which is where these funds would be coming from. And so the intern's cost, a lot of that is assessed to adjacent properties, and it's coming out of construction fund 401, which is the fund that we fund all of our street projects with, and is kind of that unbudgeted. It has a 5-year capital plan, but it's not a budget that the city council adopts year over year.
Okay.
So my thought process is we drop back to an intern a year, and we already make up that cost of that 12,000 a year.
Okay.
Bill, so first of all, thank you, and this is Tad, and you know, really good presentation, really impressive software and technology, as the chairman said. And what you presented to us, it looks like that's probably, and I'm looking at the proposal as well, it looks like that's probably the deluxe version, and you know, it looks like there's several items in here within the proposal, and I'm just wondering, what flexibility is there in kind of picking and choosing? Is there kind of a menu option? And maybe Paul, maybe more of a question for you. Is this scalable, or is there kind of an a la carte? We can kind of pick and choose some of these items to also defray the cost.
It's a good question. And from the proposal that is in your packet, we selected the items that we thought were what would be beneficial for us. So that spreadsheet that is in front of you, those are the items that staff felt would provide a lot of value to us. There's a lot of other options. I think they have a work order management module and a public engagement module. Really, we're not that advanced with our, I mean, we're not big enough to, in my opinion, to have a work order type module. And there's other things that they can collect out when the car is driving that we don't feel would be beneficial to us. And so what we have here in this table is what we thought out of the proposal would be beneficial to us to have that data.
Just, Mr. Chair, one follow-up then. Thanks, Paul. And clearly, I mean, great presentation, great technology. I can see that it would clearly benefit and streamline. I'll just add too, from personal experience at past job mine, I used to do some of this manual, the Pazer pavement rating. So I'll attest it is mind-numbingly time-consuming. So. And, you know, I see the value in that it would remove some of that subjectivity, as you, Paul, you mentioned too. So good to know that we can maybe scale it a little bit and there'd be some savings with built in with the interns.
Yeah, I think it's a boost in efficiency for sure, no doubt. Scaling back on the intern costs and kind of replacing it with this. I'm curious, is it like a 5-year contract that you'd sign each time, or is it just year to year? How does that work?
Paul, well, I can tell you, so the software is licensed annually. And, you know, if we do have some clients that will sign one contract that'll include multiple scans. You know, some clients like to do the scan every 3 years, some like to do it every 5. It's kind of a, you know, kind of a personal choice, but it's you know, there's different factors that come into play. But you know, typically what we see is you know, our clients will contract with us to do the scan. You know, perhaps get 1 year of the software and then renew the software going into the second year, and you know, renew it annually. And then when it comes time for the second scan, you know, we would put that proposal and price together for the scan at that time.
Okay. I'm just learning about a lot of this for the first time. I don't know if I'm comfortable doing a motion to just jump into this right now. I'd like to sit down with Paul and talk about the details a little bit before we move forward with it. But I do think it definitely holds value. So yeah, Mr. Sandy.
And I think, you know, from staff's perspective, we wanted to get this in front of you tonight, and then the 5-year capital plan will be coming out at the next meeting. And if it's kind of a consensus, we'll include it so you guys can see that cost in there, in the 5-year plan, because it's going to be out of the construction fund if that's what you guys decide. And that way you can see how that fits into the 5-year plan, that cost year over year.
Richard, you have some?
You know, the one thing I'm kind of looking at is you know, the 60,000 one time seems a little steep, and I know there's some you know, objectivity, but correct me if I'm wrong. It's not. There's a schedule that the streets are being improved on. It's not like, okay, this street is dropped, so it's kind of a feel for where the streets are. I mean, those numbers don't trigger any action if they go above or beyond, or you know, above or below. Correct?
Well, so to answer your question, Mr. Pritchett, so when we get the data done, we'll actually put it in. I can show you the spreadsheet if we have a few minutes here. Sean, can you switch me back to presenter view? Oh, I suppose it's got to be over here again. So when we get our scores, we actually take this column, the pavement rate column, and we sort it smallest to largest.
Okay.
And then we have the streets identified that are already in the 5-year plan in that red color. And then we go through and we look at, and we try to group, you know, streets too in certain areas like northeast, southeast. And so we'll pick the lowest score streets.
So it does trigger action.
Yep, it
Oh,
does. You know, the lowest scores, you know, if we're looking at northeast for 1 year, we will go through the lowest scores in northeast. And then we'll try to conglomerate projects based on what the lowest score is.
Yeah, I think I'd have to see how it fits in the overall budget. I mean, I'm not dead set against it, but I'm a little concerned about the upfront cost.
Yep. So yeah, I guess what staff will do is when we come back with the 5-year capital plan, we'll include that in there, and so you guys could kind of see.
Yeah, options with or without.
Yep.
Okay, great. Bill, thank you for that presentation. Appreciate all the info.
Absolutely, you bet, gentlemen. Thank you for your time and the opportunity to speak with you.
Thank you.
All right, we still have a fourth item. We're gonna review the streetlight policy capital project cost examples.
Yeah, you can take it over, Sean.
And Mr. Sandy, if you wanna jump into that one, we got about 15 minutes until council. If we can get this
Yep.
down to 5-10 minutes of discussion, that'd be great.
Yeah, so last time we discussed the streetlight policy, we came back with some direction to run a few cost scenarios, along with looking at some maybe middle of the road streetlight options that might be a little less costly. And so what we have is one of the two items you guys asked for tonight. We thought we'd get this in front of you because it might change how you look at things. We ran 3 different cost scenarios. One is if we were just to replace the lights next year for the North Brainerd Street project. Then we ran a scenario with the 2025 Washington Street project. And then we ran a city-wide scenario where all the lights in the city would get replaced and how that affects our annual bill that gets paid to BPU. And so if we look, Sean, you want to go to the second page of this? So if you look at the orange section, so right now, our current annual charge for the North Brainerd project, again, this is Juniper Street, North 3rd Street, North 7th Street, and North 6th Street. Our current annual charge is $2,300 for the 23 Pinto lights, and the 6 Cobra lights are about $930. You can see the North Brainerd annual charge, if we were to change those out with new fixtures and poles, how that changes. You can see the change annually, if we were just to replace the fixtures on top of the poles, is about $1,500 annually. New fixtures and poles, the change would be about $2,400 annually, which is about $124 a month for just the new fixture heads and $200 for the new fixtures and poles. So that's just one capital project in our 5-year plan. I think the bigger number to look at is if we were to change out all the commercial lights on Washington Street in one project. You can see the difference there. We have 126 what we call Cobra headlights. If we were just to replace fixtures on the existing poles, it would be an annual change of about $9,600 a year or about $800 a month. The new fixtures and poles, the annual change would be just less than $15,000 or about $1,200 a month. And then the number that we're trying to wrap our head around was what it would be citywide. If every light got replaced, what would our annual bill change? And if we were to do that, out of the 1,499 lights we have, our bill would change about $8,000 a month citywide for new fixtures and poles, or about $5,180 for just new fixtures. So that kind of gets your head wrapped around kind of what the costs of implementing the choices that you guys had for the residential light and the commercial light.
Okay.
So, I mean, what staff's thought was if maybe we want to do a portion of this, maybe the committee would like to look at just doing a different color of residential pole and fixture, and then just changing out like our like large corridor lighting, like the commercial lights, and work on those over time. Being that those are our main traffic generators, they're our major streets. The residential lights maybe could just have a color change and see a lot of benefit. Because that's where a lot of the cost is going to come from. There's a lot more residential lights than there are commercial. So there's multiple ways you can look at this, but it kind of wraps your head around what the cost impact would be from implementing a policy with completely new fixtures.
Right. And since I talked to you about this, Paul, a couple weeks ago, but since then, we've reached out to some vendors about something that would be even closer to what we're at right now, and we just haven't heard back yet.
Yep.
Correct? Did you reach out for both residential and
Yep.
main thoroughfare type lighting? Okay.
Yep.
I think we're getting closer to an answer. I don't know. I think you're right about maybe focusing on those main thoroughfares. The big thing right now is obviously the 210 project coming up, and that's not for about 3 years now. I think we'll finish this before then, but I don't think we need to rush into any decision on this one either. So if we can keep shopping around with these vendors, maybe they'll get us on speed dial, and every time we ask them a question here, pretty soon they'll just get back to us right away. But I think we're coming into a time of year we might start hearing back from them a little quicker too.
I hope so.
I say we keep shopping. I think that's the way to go. Don't make any decisions on what we're gonna do yet, even in North Brainerd. What would you say the latest would be that we could make a decision on North Brainerd residential lighting?
If it has to do with just pole color and fixture color, we could make that decision. I would think, I don't know what the lead time is right now on certain products. And so that would be, I'd have to ask BPU about what the lead time is if we were to switch. But if it's a color change, it's not gonna be that long.
Wouldn't be too big of a deal. Okay. Yeah, I guess just I think direction would just be to keep trying to get us more numbers, and we'll try to get a decision at least on that part of it by the time we need to, whenever you can find out what the lead time is. Okay? You don't need a motion on that one yet either, so we're coming out of committee with one motion tonight.
There we go.
Keep it simple. All right, that is our final item, so we're just looking for a motion to adjourn to council.
Second.
Motion is second, all in favor?